Yo guys, what's up? The rumors were true. Warcraft Reforged is having its makeover at long last. On October the 15th, a internal development patch note leaked and was uploaded to the PTR of Warcraft 3 Battle.net launcher. The data mining showed that a patch had been uploaded with the code 2.0 point something that had never been done before, and it hinted at the idea that perhaps Blizzard had come back and had started working on delivering a better Reforged experience for Warcraft 3. And now I can reveal finally that this is true. I have before me here a Warcraft 3 internal development build, where I've been able to test and give some feedback about various things. And I'm going to be able to show you guys everything that's new today, following the news of this happening that you may have already seen at the Warcraft Direct show today on November the 13th. You see, Blizzard is celebrating their 30-year anniversary for the Warcraft franchise, and while they only mentioned World of Warcraft, Hearthstone, and Warcraft Rumble in their official announcement, in the last few weeks, we have been getting rumors about potential work being done on Warcraft Reforged and maybe a Warcraft 2 Remastered coming out, and I'm going to be talking to you today about everything that's new with Warcraft Reforged. Keep in mind that this is a work in progress and that even in the coming weeks, months, and perhaps beyond, Blizzard is still going to be releasing updates to Warcraft Reforged, or let's call it Warcraft 3 from now on, for simplicity's sake. So without further ado, let's jump into it and see what's new today. Immediately obvious is the new UI look here of the opening screen. This is very obviously a callback to how Warcraft 3 used to look like with the Reign of Chaos release in the year of 2002 on July 3rd, and then the Frozen Throne expansion release on July the 1st in 2003. Whereas Reforged brought a reimagining of how Battle.net 2.0 and how Warcraft Reforged was going to be looking like with new client changes, I think many would agree that it was not necessarily for the better. And so while this isn't a one-to-one comparison to how it used to look like, as it is still something that's overlaid now on top of Battle.net 2.0, I can't be the only one that thinks that this is a lovely improvement and callback to when we had a simple but beautiful and elegant opening menu with a TFT look, just like we used to have before Reforged came out 4 years ago. You can even click on this button right here to see it in the Reign of Chaos style. Note that this is just a visual change and doesn't affect gameplay, but it's pretty cool that you can pick your opening screen based on whether you think the expansion or the original game looked better. Before I show you the rest, I just want to point out that this and many other things you're going to be seeing proves that Blizzard has been operating with more freedom and agility than they had before when they were developing and releasing Reforged, during which time the Blizzard Classic team was likely constrained greatly by bureaucratic process, extreme budget cuts, bad morale, and egregious mismanagement. To name an example, I made a 17 quality of life improvement and feedback list for Blizzard 2 months ago on YouTube, not knowing that this was going to be happening. And whether they saw that or used their own common sense or other feedback from the community, just for myself I checked, and at least 7 of the quality of life improvements and changes that I suggested have in fact been implemented. So I'll show you all about that in this video. Before I go on to the specifics, I'm very hopeful and cathartically gratified with what we've been getting so far and what I hope we're even going to be getting in the coming months. But for now, I'll just show you guys what's new and let you form your own opinions. To begin with, we've harkened back to the old days of having a single player menu and a multiplayer menu behind which all the single player and multiplayer is encapsulated. This seems like a logical thing to do, but it was very confusing and messy in Reforged client, to the point that sometimes you didn't even know if you presided inside the single player submenu or the multiplayer submenu because it just wasn't clear. Lo and behold, when we click multiplayer now, we're greeted with a very similar interface, very akin to the olden days, with a large chat and a similar UI to how we used to have it. I personally think this is lovely. This is going to be a great location for people to discuss politics in a respectful manner with each other and have discussions about other important topics that have a home inside the Warcraft 3 client. If anything, even though this is likely going to be filled with several controversial discussions and potentially insults, it's also a place to connect with other people, and even if you don't partake, you're going to be feeling like you're part of a society, rather than the more socially isolated experience of Battle.net 2.0 like it is in StarCraft 2 and Warcraft 3 Reforged before today. This is how it looks like when you chat. We have the chat, the friends tab, we have a clan tab where you can make your own clans and invite members again. Let's take a look at some of the menus that you can go into. So you've got the versus tab where you can choose what mode you want to be playing. So here you can pick your race. Orc, Undead, Night Elf. We're going to pick Night Elf, for instance. Then here you can click on the leaderboard so you can see how you stand in the world. They made improvements to the leaderboard. Now you start at the All Races tab again rather than starting at Night Elf when you pick Night Elf. So that's how it should be. It's going to be centering on your own profile, wherever that is in the ranked, or perhaps show your own ranking here at the bottom or anything like that. I can't see it now because this particular account doesn't have any ladder rankings yet, but it is a great improvement. Furthermore, in the versus screen, of course, you can be picking 1v1, 2v2, 3v3, 4v4, and FFA. This is how you can invite friends to your ranked party as well. And of course, you can do your map vetoes here also. After you've selected what you're going to be playing, you can press Find Match and you're going to be searching for that mode. The cool thing is when you get out of this menu, you can also use the Quick Find button right here that shows what race you've selected and what mode you are playing in. Of course, we have the custom game menu in order to create and join custom map lobbies. Standardized tournaments are back, automated tournaments, playing at various times in the day for people to be able to join with explanations of how they work. And they're very prominently visible now compared to before, both in this tournament screen as well as here in the top right when the next tournament is going to be coming. The leaderboard is accessible via here as well. And of course, we've got player profiles, very akin to how it used to be. Not 100% the same, because you can't write any text in your profile like back in 2003, but then again, that's probably not going to be as popular these days anyway as compared to before, since we have so many other types of social media these days. Profile looks pretty snazzy, and I believe they're working on a way for you to watch replays directly from your match history if the replay is available, though I haven't personally been able to test that. So that's the multiplayer tab and the new multiplayer look and experience. You can also see how the menu performance has improved a lot from release Reforged. It's pretty quick to change menus and click on tabs, etc. The campaign screen has been reimagined a little bit with these books representing chapters of the campaign, grouping together the Warcraft 3 original and the TFT to be a seamless, ordered list of campaigns. So I think that's pretty snazzy looking. Finally ending with the founding of Duratar RPG style missions. Alright, so let's go take a look at the custom game section in single player. One thing that I think is pretty cool, this is where most people that are going to be trying out Melee for the first time are going to be going towards. And whereas before the good old Booty Bay was always the starter map, as it ranks at the top via the fact that it is a two-player map, which ranks at the top, and it's also ABC ordered alphabetically. And so it always began with Booty Bay, so you would see that when new players try out Warcraft 3 for the first time, they always go to Booty Bay. But Booty Bay is a pretty horrendous map and is not very illustrative of how Warcraft 3 is played generally, so they created another map that ranks higher on the ABC, which is in fact the standard ranked Lost Temple, and they called it a starter map. So now when people start playing and they just want to get in the game immediately, they're going to be hitting create, and it's going to be a two-player version of Lost Temple where you always span across from each other. So I think that's pretty cool. So let's go take a look at the in-game of this new Warcraft Reforged. To people that are in the know, you can immediately see some changes. Notably, the lighting effects are different, which also casts different types of shadows. So we are right now using classic HD graphics. This is an entirely new and third graphics toggle. Basically, you're going to be having multiple options of how you want your game to look like. We'll go through the full menu later, but for now suffice to say that if you toggle the classic mode here, it's going to look virtually the same as original Warcraft 3 Classic, and the way that you've been seeing me play Warcraft 3 for the last few years. It's just pretty much classic entirely. But if you click the Reforged toggle, but then move all these sliders to the right so that you've got classic HD, basically they are up-res versions of classic graphics that show more pixels and higher fidelity, and also use a different lighting setting essentially than original Warcraft 3 had. Whether you like classic HD more or true classic, is going to be definitely a question of choice and preference. The differences aren't large, and I can show it more later in detail, but know that both the classic, original, and Reforged graphics have been pretty much untouched. There's just more choices now for you to pick from. Before I get into the nitty-gritty of doing a graphics comparison breakdown, let's first show a couple of other things that are different when you're inside a game of Warcraft 3 with the new Reforged 2.0, as it were. So first of all, you can see all these yellow text here. Of course, you can turn all of them off via typing /ping, /apm, /fps, and /time. But it's pretty cool that nowadays you can have an optional time clock that actually corresponds to real amount of time that has passed. You still have the day-night dial that shows what time of the day it is, which has real gameplay implications, but having an in-game clock is quite a nice learning tool, and some people may like to display it. And if you don't, you just type /time. All of these can also be changed via the in-game menu, show time elapsed, show FPS, show ping, show actions per minute, and you can also show portraits and cinematics. Some of you may have already noticed that the HUD I've been using is much smaller than it normally is. This is how the full HUD looks like at 100%. I would be covering rather a lot of the minimap. It is rather large, takes up a large portion of the screen, and it has always been like this when you play Warcraft 3. But now you can go to the gameplay settings and you can make it as small as 0, which makes the HUD absolutely tiny. And while this may make it more difficult to mouse-click items, this is of course an entirely personal choice, and it gives you a lot of game screen to enjoy visually, and also you're going to be seeing more things, and it may be a competitive advantage. Anyone that still clicks things in the command card is probably not going to make it this small, but go for something in between, such as for instance 70%, which is still quite a bit smaller than the original. Or maybe you want something like 40% or 30%, like this is 30. I shouldn't say percent because obviously 0% would be invisible. Let's say value 30. Another really cool thing that has changed is that you can go to the hotkeys tab and change almost all the hotkeys from inside the game client. Navigate to org and choose a new hotkey for the Altar of Storms. You can immediately save it and apply it. And it will be applied in the next game you play. It does not automatically update yet while you're in the game for most hotkeys. Though I did do some testing and realized that other hotkeys do change on the fly while you're still inside the game. Namely something like the attack command. If I change that away from A to L, for instance, I don't know why I would want to do that, but you can. Then you can see that that's immediately reflected in the command card, and I can press L and do an attack command. The cool thing is, in the past, you would need to do hotkeys via the custom keys txt file inside your documents folder of Warcraft 3. And while that is still possible, basically this in-game hotkey customization option gives those commands to the txt file and edits it accordingly. And it's pretty cool that some of the hotkeys automatically update while you're still in the game. Because before, when you wanted to make changes to your hotkeys, it always had to be done to the txt file, and then you had to join a new game as well. So you can do a little bit of fixing here while you're in the game, whereas for other hotkeys, you need to just join a new game again. But you can change it here and then join a new game, which is cool. When hosting and creating a multiplayer game, or joining a ladder game with allies and enemies, you can from now on see your allies' race, your opponents' race, as they were picked when they queued up for the game, which is something we've been asking for a long time, and now we're finally going to be having it. I absolutely love this. I mean, it's a simple thing, it's an obvious thing. This and many other things probably should have been in the game when Reforged came out, but I for one am very grateful that I no longer have to start every game when I'm playing multiplayer with, yo guys, did you see the opponent's race? Yo guys, did you see their race? Because it's going to be able to be visible right here. If they picked random, it's going to show the random symbol, as obviously it shouldn't be giving away what race they are if they are random. But for people that picked undead, elf, and human, you can see it right here on the F11 allies menu, and I love it. Note that when you're inside the classic graphics toggle, you can actually decide to have HUD side panels on or off when you're inside the game. This is how it looks like when they are on, but you can now choose to, in these settings, remove them as well. by going to the options and gameplay menu, turning them off, saving, and then you've got that extra free space as well. Note that when you have the HUD side panels on, you cannot touch HUD scaling. It will always use the 100 value when you turn them on. Now I'm going to be going over some of the settings, options and changes that Reforged 2.0 has introduced. After that, I'm going to be doing a graphical side-by-side comparison for some of the different graphic settings that one can choose. And then finally I'll show some tooltip improvements that Blizzard has done for various heroes and units and abilities in the game. Alright, so the settings menu is accessible from anywhere in the game by pressing this hamburger menu right here. You go to the options, and here are some of the new choices that we have. When we're in the Reforged graphic settings, we can change things that we had never been able to change before. I encourage you guys to try out various settings and see what you like the best. You can put lighting on high, medium, low. You can change foliage, which is off by default, but can be turned up as well. Anti-aliasing, I don't remember we had that before in Warcraft 3. The effects of spells, particles, textures, and shadows. And so this is all new stuff that we were not able to pick before. Then when we go to the sound effects, most of these are as they were before, though it's been reordered a bit in the new look of the menu. But one pretty cool thing is that you can pick other types of music as well. Not just the whole Warcraft 3 soundtrack that you guys have been listening to during this video, but you can also go, if you want to, I don't think you should, I mean it's a taste of preference, but you can also go to Warcraft 1 music or Warcraft 2 music. As of the making of this video, Warcraft 2 is not how I remember the original to be. This sounds like a lower quality 16-bit version, but I'm sure they're going to be getting it right for the 13th of November, which is when you guys are going to be seeing this video that I'm making now. Yo guys, Grubby from the future here. Turns out they already fixed the music soundtrack for Warcraft 2 to be the original Warcraft 2 soundtrack in all its glory. Take a listen. That's the correct one. So good. So if you want to play with that now from the client, you can. Alright, back to Lumberjack Grubby. The Warcraft 1 music, I have no personal nostalgia with it, and I think it's not as good as Warcraft 2 and 3. And I do think that Warcraft 3 is best played on Warcraft 3 music, just my personal preference, but it's pretty cool they give us those options, and it is also a nod towards the interconnectedness of the Warcraft anniversary event that is happening today. As you can see, Warcraft 1 is not quite as sophisticated as Warcraft 3, but it makes sense because it came out like 30 years ago. Alright, we continue in good old Warcraft 3 music, and we go to the next tab of the menu. We've got the gameplay menu, where you may have seen a couple of cool new changes. The old settings are still there, such as the enabled improved zoom, being able to choose your default and max camera distance. One cool thing is that on first installation of Warcraft 3, the unit life bars will always be on rather than off. This is still a setting, but I think it is a modernization of the likely intent for new players that they're going to be wanting to see their health bars. Some people may benefit from using team-colored life bars, which will make it clearer which faction everyone's units are on. Though I personally don't like this setting, it's good of course that it exists and that it is an option. Most of these were previously brought in with the Reforged that we got in 2020, such as the special hero status bars and the showing hero level, as well as the subgroup order modifier key. Though it looks like the tooltip overlay is incorrect, that it says press F5 default. That's a feedback that I'll be sending forward as well. And if you guys see any other bugs, make sure to let them know. It is clear that they have been listening. Also, the well-intended but not very well functioning formation movement toggle is disabled by default when you start Warcraft 3 for the first time ever, which I think is nice. It was kind of like a newbie pitfall that this was always on by default, and you would have to tell people, yo, turn off your formations when you're new to Warcraft 3. So this is just one of those improved default settings that helps people set up their Warcraft 3 a little bit better. Numbers for cooldowns was also previously existing, but the showing of a deny icon is new. Basically, it's like in W3 Champions as well as in Dota. that when you kill one of your own units, an exclamation mark will show up that outlines that you were the one that got that kill, and it's going to be in your player color. And this is pretty good player feedback for both players to know that no experience would have been granted to an opponent with that. That is why that's significant. And it's pretty cool that they've picked up such a functionality and made it an option to show that. There is now a goldmine unit counter that when it's on and you put your peons in the goldmine, you're going to be having the 5 out of 5 markation or 4 out of 5, which is a great help to new players, because before the only way to ascertain that you had full workers, which it was of course a skill issue, was to constantly hold shift and select all your workers multiple times and then looking at how many are selected in your UI. Or you could confirm it visually from experience as well by looking at it, but having a counter is a great quality of life improvement. Your Warcraft 3 will launch with in-game opponent chat disabled. That means by default you will not be greeted, befriended or flamed by any opponents you'll be playing against on the multiplayer ladder or in custom games. If you do want this connection to your opponents, then you can just turn this on right here, which I will be doing. Going over to the fourth tab, the input tab, your scroll speed and keyboard scroll speed will start at 50%. I always max these out. Here you can choose to use the classic grid or custom key bindings, which is the same as it was before, nothing new here. But of course the way that the hotkeys can be changed has been reimagined, and maybe reimagined again in the future, or so I've heard. This may not be the final look and implementation, and functionality may even be expanded, but for now this is a big improvement over how it has been possible to change hotkeys in the last 22 years of Warcraft 3 having been out. And last but certainly not least, you've got the Reforged tab, where if you've turned on the Reforged mode toggle, you can decide how you want your game to look like in a very granular way. So your choices will be classic how it used to be, we'll call that classic SD. Then there's classic HD, which is actually how the game looked like during my talking over the last few minutes. And then there's the Reforged graphics that came and were developed and designed by a combination of Blizzard Classic in 2018, as well as their outsourced art team from Malaysia, Lemon Sky. You could have heroes looking like classic heroes, but your units looking like Reforged. I don't know who's going to be wanting to play like that, but that's a very personal decision that you can now make. And I think having these options is absolutely fantastic. It may also be important for user-generated content, like any map makers that want to have some kind of best of both worlds experience. And they may be making unique decisions here or suggesting unique settings that may make their map look the best. And you may like the environment that Reforged brought, but not like any of the units or buildings, and just go into a game like this with 1 out of 6 Reforged settings and the rest all on Classic HD. Even the icons can be separately changed, as well as the visual effects like immolation, mana burn, and literally everything else like lightning shield. And now I'm going to be showing you the difference between the full Classic HD, the full Reforged, and the full Classic SD when looking at the same thing. And I encourage you to try out your own personal subdivision settings that you may be enjoying. I do expect in the future I'll mostly just be using either Classic HD or full Classic SD, as the Reforged graphics really aren't to my liking that much, but to each their own. So first I'm going to be starting up and showing a base and a lot of different units in Reforged settings. So this is the Archmage, this is how Blizzard looks like in Reforged. And this is how Classic Blizzard looks like. Alright, let's show the Classic HD graphics now. Here's the Blizzard. It should also be noted that, though I believe they may have plans to change that, in the current version of Warcraft 3, if you are on the Reforged toggle here, you will automatically also accept the Reforged audio changes. And hopefully we'll get a 7th toggle here where we can choose to use that or not when we're using Reforged or Classic HD graphics. But for now it's still coupled together, which means if you like your peasants to sound like this when they die, then currently that's something you'll be getting when you're on Reforged settings. But if you don't like it, your only recourse would be to have Classic SD graphic settings. Which means I'll definitely be using Classic SD until I get the option to turn off Reforged sounds. Because listen to this.
For the king! Have at thee! For the king!
That's how a peasant should sound like when it dies. And only like that. There it is. So unless you want various death sounds on archers, peasants, peons, grunts, and more, then it's classic SD for now. But if you do enjoy them, hopefully you'll be able to choose that as a setting going forward, even when using classic HD graphic settings. I also noticed Blizzard made a pass at some of the tooltips of various units and heroes in the game. These are the ones I've been able to find, going over everything and comparing it with the original tooltips. Blademaster's Bladestorm now reads, rendering him immune to magic and spells, which is of course accurate, as when Blademaster uses Bladestorm, he cannot be hit by units like Chimeras, nor can he be Stormbolted or something like that. The same is true for the Blood Mage's Phoenix, that now reads that it has magic and spell immunity, as well as resistant skin. It is true, Frostworms cannot attack a Phoenix. This one makes a lot of sense as well. For the Cryptlord's Locust Swarm, it ends by saying pierces spell immunity, which is a very useful tooltip addition that tells people that this does in fact, and I tested this, work against units that have spell immunity, such as a Destroyer or a Dryad. This is in fact true for pretty much all the hero ultimate abilities, and while most Warcraft 3 players know this, there is no mention of it in the tooltip, and it looks like now there is. It's quite akin to the Dota tooltips, where it explains whether someone has magical immunity or whether you can pierce that as well. It's a nice little extra quality of life tooltip text that can help people to understand that Locust Swarm will in fact hit everyone. Well, I guess except mechanical units. For the Death Knight's Death Coil, it now says healing pierces spell immunity, which correctly indicates that you can use a Death Coil on your Lich while it is under the effects of a Potion of Lesser Invulnerability. Additionally, you are able to use Coil on Destroyers, which are magic immune and spell immune, but can still receive a Death Coil. This is also pretty much true for all healing effects in Warcraft 3. You can always use Priest Healing, Death Coil, Healing Wave, and Tranquility on units that are invulnerable, even though invulnerable makes them otherwise impervious to pretty much all effects that aren't piercing that immunity. So it's cool that Coil now says that as well. For the Paladin's Holy Light, it says the same thing. Healing pierces spell immunity. Naga's Tornado also pierces spell immunity, and it says so. Lich's Death and Decay used to read, damages everything in its area of effect by 4% of its base hit points per second. Which is of course not very true, because the base hit point for a Lich is 475. But if I pick up Periapto Vitality and an enemy Lich Death and Decays me, then my base HP is 475, but my max health is higher, and so now it accurately reflects that, which is pretty neat. Max hit points per second. This is correct. For Naga Sea Witch's Mana Shield, just like for Medusa in Dota 2, and for whatever the Naga Sea Witch was called in Dota 1, Mana Shield has always ignored the fact that she has hero armor or what type of damage she is receiving. It didn't matter if it was piercing, magic, or siege. It always just did 100% to the mana of her pool. And now it accurately reflects that in the tooltip by saying blocked damage ignores armor and armor types, which is nice to know. Keeper of the Grove's Thorns aura used to read, an aura that gives friendly nearby units a damage shield, which returns a percentage of a melee attacker's damage back to it. Which is all kinds of wrong, actually, like when you think about it. Because one, it does not offer a damage shield, as no damage is mitigated. And when it says it returns a percentage of damage, it sounds like the damage would never be taken by the Keeper aura affected unit in the first place. Like he receives 100, but then knocks 15 back, so he only receives 85. So it was really quite confusing, and it's cleaned up quite a bit. It now reads, an aura that causes enemies to take a percentage of melee damage dealt to nearby friendly units. So enemies that do damage to nearby friendly units now take a percentage of that melee damage. And it no longer seems to suggest that there's any form of mitigation. The Tinker's Rocket tooltip now says bombards an area with rockets, damaging and stunning enemy ground and air units for 1 second. Also hits mechanicals and buildings. Way more descriptive and also correct. Shadowhunter's Healing Wave used to read, calls forth a wave of energy that heals a target and bounces to nearby friendlies. Each bounce heals less damage. And now it reads, each bounce restores fewer hit points. Which seems to be a little cleaner than before, I like it. And for Shadowhunter's Hex, the description seems to have been greatly expanded to show everything Hex does, though it doesn't show everything Hex does actually. It used to just say, transforms an enemy unit into a random critter, disabling special abilities. What are special abilities? But that's how it always was. I mean, I didn't need it to be bigger, but I guess it makes sense that it now also reads, Hex disables a unit's abilities, item usage, ability to attack, and slows the unit to minimum movement speed. By the way, it also stops the hero from gaining experience if they are hexed, if a unit dies near them while they're hexed. And they also don't have mana regeneration, unless that's been fixed somehow, but that was always the case. It even disables active channels like defense on the footman, so that when he has defend on and you hex him, your piercing damage will deal full damage again. So Hex does a lot, and now it pretty much has most of it, whereas before it just said special abilities. For Priestess of the Moon, it is now clear that the Scout Owl is invincible. Temporarily summons an invincible Owl Scout, which can be used to scout the map, can see invisible units. Starfall is correctly listed as piercing spell immunity. You are able to hit dryads and destroyers. Same is true for Pitlord's Doom, pierces spell immunity. For the Obsidian statue, I can detect 3 changes. It used to read, large flying unit that must consume magic to sustain its mana. Excellent at destroying enemy casters in clusters of ground forces, just like it does now. And then it said, initially has spell immunity, devour magic, absorb mana, and orb of annihilation. Which is funny because it has that initially, but that's also all it has. It had nothing else. So the initially has is gone, and now it reads destroyers have magic and spell immunity, which makes sense because, again, they're not just spell immune, they're also immune to magic. And you may think that that distinction is obvious, but it isn't per se, because spell bracers, well, actually, let's not get into that. Just trust me, it makes sense. Magic and spell immunity both makes sense, and then all the other abilities is still the same. The other 2 abilities have been slightly retouched as well. It used to read, for Essence of Blight, restores 10 hit points to nearby friendly units, but you didn't know up to how many it could do. Now it says to up to 6 nearby friendly non-mechanical units, which is correct. It doesn't specify that it costs you more mana when you max out the amount of units that you can heal, and less mana than listed when you're healing fewer units, but that's a relatively small concession or missing part. At least it's clear now that you can heal up to 6 nearby friendly units. For Spirit Touch, again, restores 2 mana to up to 6 nearby friendly units, whereas before it didn't say how many it could heal. So that's a super neat change. And then finally on the Destroyer itself, the spell immunity ability that it has, the passive, renders this unit immune to magic and most spells. And this spell immunity tag, many units have this in the game, and so I'm assuming that they're all going to be reading immune to magic and most spells, whereas before it just said renders this unit immune to spells, which really doesn't cover the load, because you also can't attack them with sorceresses, priests, shamans, etc., nor frostworms, and they're also not immune to all spells, because they're immune to most spells. Notably, they're not immune to Coil, Tranquility, Locust Swarm, Tornado, etc. So I think that's a really cool rewording of spell immunity that clearly indicates what it actually does now. Hey guys, Grubby from the future here. I almost forgot to show you something really important and interesting as well. Remember the collection menu that Reforged came with? Well, its functionality has been expanded quite a bit. We've gotten a lot of extra freebies. Basically, many of the single player campaign skins have been made available for you to use even in your multiplayer games. So if you're playing one-on-one on the Battle.net ladder, if you're playing 4-on-4, you could have your paladin be any of the paladin skins that you played with in the campaign. You can have your Archmage be Antonidas. You can have your Mountain King be Muradin, and not just one of the standard generic Mountain King names and skins that we normally use in the game. So we're getting some cool customization, and it's going to be completely free, at least for now. None of these will be sold, we're just getting them. You can go into battle with your Blade Master looking like the Blade Master of the Blackrock clan or Grommash Hellscream. Alright, no talking anymore. Let me show you some. Alright guys, you remember the standard Blade Master? Here's Blade Master with the skin. We're making this one. The icon is different already.
I can wait no
Grommash Hellscream. You can play with this now in one-on-one. I think that's super cool. And of course, we should have had this with Reforged release, but we didn't, but now we do, and that makes it all better. Grommash Hellscream is my Blade Master. I'll show you guys what my Farseer is.
I'll consider it.
For the Horde! It's Thrall. It's Thrall the Farseer. You can play with Thrall every game you like. Tarn Chieftain.
For the tribes.
For the tribes. It's Karen Bloodhoof. Notably, he doesn't look different here. That's because I'm playing on Classic HD, and apparently he doesn't have a skin upgrade here. But at the very least, he still sounds like Karen.
Gladly.
Which is pretty freaking cool.
Work complete. What do you
And here's the Shadow Hunter.
Death be a real treat.
Rokan from the Beastmaster campaign where you play with Rexar.
Das Dingo. I feel you, man.
It's nice to be able to play with some different voice acting as well.
You be tricksy.
Alright, for Undead, let's play with Kel'Thuzad, Deathrok, and let's see which Death Knight skin shall we use. We can go with the Fallen King Arthas, but it's only available in the Spoils of War edition, which of course I'm going to be having on my main account, but this particular account isn't loaded out with it. But we do have Arthas Frostmourne right here. Let's go check this one out. We choose these, and let's jump into a game with Undead. Okay, to show these Undead skins, I actually had to switch to Reforged graphics. Some skins are available in certain graphics, and some skins are only available in others. Note that the Reforged Undead Blight has received significant graphical improvement. This looks so much better than how it used to look. But aside from that, let's check out the new Death Knight, Dreadlord, and Lich skins you can play with in ladder if you use Reforged graphics.
Upgrade complete.
Baron Bloodbane.
The night.
There's Deathrok. And that's Kel'Thuzad the Lich. Alright guys, Night Elf has some pretty snazzy new skins as well. You can see it already in the icon for the Demon Hunter. I love playing with this voice lines. I love playing with this.
Evil
Illidan. All of your custom games, one-on-one, etc. You can play with Illidan with the Burning Feet. Probably actually a pay-to-lose skin. Not that you paid, but seeing the Burning Feet. But it looks so cool. And the voice acting, man.
I am the hand. Justice will be done.
Maiev, original voice acting. No different portrait or character or anything, but it's cool to play with these voice lines.
The guilty will suffer. I will finish the hunt.
And the Priestess of the Moon.
Sentinels attack.
The original Tyrande voice.
By Elim.
On other graphic settings, you may also see Tyrande actually as she looked in the campaign, but here at least you get the voice, which is awesome.
As the goddess wills.
So there you have it. It's a whole bevy of improvements and settings that you can be picking from now when playing Warcraft Reforged. I think it's really cool that Blizzard is back in the building, be it because of restructuring or because of Microsoft or whatever, I don't know. I'm just glad that they're looking at and making updates, positive updates for Warcraft 3 again that really connect well with what I and many others of the community have been asking for. I know it's easy to be on the Blizzard hate train, and I definitely have been as well, considering the way that they dropped the ball with Reforged and the radio silence for many years. And while 2 years ago we started having some semi-periodic balance changes, they were really nice, I still couldn't help but feel a sense of anger and abandonment sometimes when it came to how Warcraft and Reforged were handled in the last few years. I know that may seem a little entitled to some people because at the end of the day, you buy Warcraft 3 once for $60 22 years ago, and you can't realistically expect the game to still be balanced, patched, updated, given quality of life makeovers, tooltip changes, menu and UI revamps, etc. But of course, our expectations from Blizzard were high because they have been such a good game company for so many years, so it had been pretty sad to see the decline that they had been suffering in the last 10 years or so, with potentially shareholder pressure and management mismanagement causing direct collateral damage to Warcraft, the game that we all know and love. It's always a mixture of feelings, where on the one hand I'm disappointed by some of the things that had happened with Reforged and some of the damage that had been done to the reputation of the game, and thinking of what it could have been, but at the same time it's also mixed because I'm also very grateful that the servers are still up, that balance changes and UI changes are still happening, and UX changes are still happening. And I must say it feels quite nice that Blizzard is showing some love again and acknowledging us in front of the world. And so I think a little bit of reputation repair is happening right now with Blizzard, and I see that as an incredibly good thing. My contact at Blizzard even mentioned that when he was making these changes, he wasn't just keeping 1v1 or the campaign in mind, but also tested some of these changes over user-generated content, such as Direct Strike, making sure that that still works, which proves that they had noticed that this map had gotten really popular and generally bodes well for things like the Reforged campaign project that I had previously played and shown, which is an amazing project. Leaving Reforged as a setting that remains accessible for everyone means that those maps shouldn't get bricked, as they are heavily leaning upon the implementation of Reforged graphics in order to have their maps be working properly now. And while I'm sure there's going to be some bugs that everyone definitely should report, care has been taken to try and make this integration as seamless as possible, and I, for one, really appreciate that. It's good to give criticism when criticism is due, but it's also good to give credit where it is due, without getting bogged down in some of the resentment and anger that we may have been feeling over the last few years. I know I have, and I bet you have as well. Overall, I'm super glad that there have been quality of life improvements and that Blizzard has read, listened, agreed, and implemented many pieces of feedback that has been given by me and many others of the community over the past few years. I feel like Blizzard is finally showing again the respect for the original essence and source material of Warcraft 3 in trying to restore kind of the look of the old client and even bringing lots of cool new features and quality of life improvements. I feel like it is restoring honor to Warcraft 3 and restoring the reputation of Warcraft 3 to the world, and I hope they will continue to support for some time to come the client, the gameplay experience, and any ideas people might have for Warcraft 3 the game as well. Alright, that's it for me. I'm going to be closing out this video. Expect more videos coming from me to highlight some of the things that are new. Maybe I'll show you like my favorite graphics settings. I'll be looking for you guys' comments as well. How you made your game look good, what settings you like. Do let me know so that I can check them out as well. With 6 different toggles for Reforged graphic settings, there must be many permutations possible, and then you've got all the lighting and anti-aliasing changes, etc. So there really must be hundreds and hundreds of combinations that are possible, so you can find the one that you like best. Same as before, so in the future I'll be continuing to play Warcraft 3, both casual melee play, 1v1, team play, as well as the custom games that Warcraft 3 has to offer. And I hope you enjoyed both the Warcraft Direct show that you saw today perhaps, as well as my video here summarizing the changes that have happened in Reforged 2.0 as we call it. And I hope you found this video entertaining and informative, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button upon the end of watching this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers, see you next time.